A man in Asia starts watching movie highlights on his phone, short clips, harmless stuff. Then the algorithm suggests something slightly edgier. He watches, then something a little more. He watches again. Within weeks, he is watching pornography. That story is not from a documentary about internet addiction. It is not from a psychology journal. That story is in the official March 2026 edition of the Watchtower, the primary doctrinal publication of the Jehovah's Witnesses, distributed to millions of members worldwide. And it is being used to make a very specific argument about what happens when you enjoy entertainment without organizational approval. I have the magazine right here, page 18, paragraph 18. And today we are going forensically through this article. How will you fight your distractions? Because buried inside what sounds like pastoral guidance is one of the most revealing psychological control documents the governing body has published in years. If you are new here, like and subscribe. This channel reads the source material so you don't have to take anyone's word for it. Let's go. Manufacturing the problem. Before you can control someone's behavior, you first need to convince them that their natural behavior is dangerous. That is step 1 of this article, and it begins on page 14. The article opens by framing the entire concept of distraction inside the Jehovah's Witness theological worldview, specifically, the belief that the end of this current system of things is imminent. That framing is not incidental. It is load-bearing, because if Armageddon is coming soon, then every hour you spend on something that isn't directly connected to Jehovah's organization is an hour you cannot get back. Every Netflix series, every video game, every vacation, all of it gets recontextualized, not as normal human rest, but as time stolen from eternal survival. Paragraph 2 of the article, on page 14, says directly that Jehovah's people, like careful drivers, try to identify what could distract them from concentrating on the road ahead. The metaphor is precise and deliberate. A distraction while driving kills you. The article is asking members to treat a Saturday afternoon watching football with the same psychological weight as taking your eyes off the wheel at highway speed. Now here is where it gets interesting. Paragraph 4 lists the kinds of things that could become distractions: health concerns, family matters, political unrest, economic anxiety, disease, real human problems. And then paragraph 6 makes a move that is worth pausing on. It says that some people, overwhelmed by these difficulties, try to relieve their distress by filling their lives with entertainment or recreation. Read that again. A person is going through something hard: financial stress, family crisis, health fear, and they watch a movie to decompress. According to this article, that impulse is the beginning of a spiritual problem. The very act of seeking relief through entertainment is presented as a symptom of misplaced priorities. Not a normal human response to pain. A warning sign. That is not pastoral care. That is the pathologizing of rest. Now let's go to page 18, because this is where the article reveals its real strategy. And it does it through a story. Paragraph 18 tells the story of, quote, one of our brothers in Asia. He started watching movie highlights on an online platform, completely passive, just clips that the algorithm served him. Then the algorithm suggested more. He kept watching. The content got worse. Eventually, he ended up viewing pornography. The article presents this as a cautionary example of why members need good judgment when choosing entertainment. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. Algorithm rabbit holes are real. Pornography addiction is a documented problem that affects people across every background. The concern itself is legitimate. But look at how the article uses this story. It does not say, be careful with algorithms. It does not say, here are some practical digital habits. What it says is that this brother's first mistake, the original sin, if you want to use their language, was watching movie highlights, casual mainstream content. The implication is that the problem began not with the pornography, but with the entertainment itself. The entry point was the issue, the clip, the hobby, the leisure. This is a manipulation technique with a name. In behavioral psychology, it is called a slippery slope framing, and it works by collapsing the distance between a neutral behavior and a harmful outcome. If you can convince someone that watching a movie is the first step toward moral destruction, you don't need to ban movies explicitly. The member bans them internally, preemptively, out of fear of where they might lead. And critically, the solution the article offers is not critical thinking about content. It is not teaching members to recognize manipulation in algorithms or to develop healthy boundaries around consumption. The solution in paragraph 18 is concrete and institutional. The brother recovered with the help of the elders. He deleted his streaming apps. He put time limits on his phone, overseen, implicitly, by the congregation structure. The takeaway the member absorbs is not, "I need better judgment." It is, "I need the elders to help me manage my phone." Personal autonomy is replaced with institutional dependency, and it's framed as recovery. Let's keep going, because the article gets more specific as it moves forward, and the specificity is telling. Paragraph 17, page 18, addresses social media. The article acknowledges that people use it to connect with family and friends around the world, to share photos, to stay informed. Then it asks members to evaluate their own usage with this question: is my use of social media refreshing me, or is it blurring my view of what is truly important? That question sounds neutral, but inside the witness framework, what is truly important has one answer: the organization, the ministry, preparation for the end. So the question is not really open-ended. It is a filter. If your social media use is not measurably contributing to organizational goals, it is, by definition, blurring your view of what matters. Then, paragraph 19, and this one stops me every time I read it, turns to vacations. The article says, and I'm reading carefully, "We all need to relax and take a break on occasion. It is good for us and helps us to stay healthy." And then, immediately, the pivot. But if we focus too much on recreation, we risk becoming unbalanced and taking time away from the more important things. The article then tells members to ask themselves, when planning a holiday, would I be making sure of what is truly important and preparing myself for the end of all things? Let that sit for a moment. You are a Jehovah's Witness. You have worked hard all year. You want to take your family to the beach for a week, and the official doctrine of your organization is asking you to evaluate that trip against the approaching end of the world, not as an aside, not as a gentle reminder, as the primary frame through which you should assess whether you are allowed to rest. This is not spiritual guidance. This is the systematic elimination of the concept of private time, time that belongs to you, not to the institution. Every moment of your existence is now subject to the question, is this serving Jehovah's purpose? And since Jehovah's purpose is mediated entirely through the organization, the practical question becomes, is this serving the governing body's agenda? Here is the honest summary of what the March 2026 Watchtower article, "How Will You Fight Your Distractions?" is doing, stripped of the theological packaging. It is teaching members to feel guilt about rest. It is using one man's story about pornography to create an ambient suspicion around all entertainment. It is framing social media, streaming services, video games, and vacations as potential gateways to spiritual failure, and positioning the elders as the appropriate gatekeepers of how much of these things a member should be allowed. The psychological mechanism underneath all of this is well documented. It is called high-demand group dynamics, and one of its core features is the elimination of what researchers call the interior life, the private mental and emotional space where a person develops independent judgment. When every choice, including where you spend your vacation and what you watch on your phone, is subject to organizational evaluation, that interior space collapses, and a person without an interior life is extremely difficult to lose. They have nowhere to go. Every thought they have about leaving is immediately evaluated against the framework the organization installed, and the framework always returns the same verdict. Leaving is destruction. The Watchtower does not need to explicitly ban movies or vacations. It just needs to make you feel that enjoying them without checking your conscience against organizational standards is the first step toward the same fate as the brother in Asia. That is not faith. That is architecture. And now you've seen the blueprints. If you've recognized any of this in your own experience, a creeping guilt around things that should feel normal, a sense that you need to justify your free time to someone, drop it in the comments. Your experience is the evidence that turns a printed policy into a documented reality.